Hello, dear lovely student. As you know, I'm Mr. Rejwan. I'm at Courgenius Educational Community. Now I'm back again with new lesson. New lesson is multiplying and dividing square root expression, page 8. Now we start with the note. If a and b are two positive integers, then we have these rules. If we have a and b are two positive integer numbers, the square root a times b equal what? The square root a times square root a. And if we have the square root a over b, we can write square root a over b. We can distribute the square root for both a and b. If we have square root b power 2, if we have the square root with power 2, directly square root and power 2 cancel together, okay? Or we have square root b all power 2, as we said, directly 2 power 2 and square root 2 cancel together, we have only b. And if we multiply two same square root by itself, we get a number without square root, okay? I mean the number inside the square root without the square root. For example, if we multiply a square root a times square root a, we get a. And if we multiply 2 square root 2 times square root 2, we get what? We get 2. When we multiply square root 3 times square root 3, we get 3 without square root. And if we multiply 10 times 10, we get what? We get 10 without square root. If we multiply 9 square root 9 times square root 9, we get what? We get 9 without square root, okay? And to simplify square root, if the number is not perfect square, I mean, we need to use perfect square to simplify the square root, okay? Now, if we look at this question, it said simplify, question A, I mean, simplify square root 12, okay? How can we simplify square root 12? Okay, I'll remind you, we have some perfect square. For example, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. Why we call that these are perfect square? Because we can get each number multiplied by itself. For example, 4 is perfect square because we can get 4 from multiply 2 by 2, okay? And directly we can find the square root of each perfect square, okay? The perfect square of the square root of each perfect square is one of two identical numbers. The square root 4 is what? 2, 9, 3, okay? 16, 4, 25, 5, okay? But if we have non-perfect square, what should we do? How can we simplify non-perfect square? Okay, we use perfect square to simplify non-perfect square, okay? Now, if you look at square root 12, if we look at square root 12, we need to find the factor of 12 that one of them is perfect square. What's the factor of 12? The factor of 12, we have 1 times 12. We get 1, we get 12. And 2 times 6, we get 12. 12. And 3 times 4, we get 12. These are the factor of 12. Now, we need to choose one of them that include perfect square. Which factor of 12 include perfect square? Now, we need to choose 3 times 4. Why? Because 4 is perfect square. And 3 times 4 is one of the factor of 12. Now, we can say to simplify non-perfect square, we have to use perfect square. Okay? Now, we need to choose 3 times 12 instead of 12. Okay? Now, we have 4 times 3. Okay? Then, by using the rule, we have to distribute the square root for both number. Okay? We have square root 4 times square root 3. Because 4 is perfect square, we can directly get the square root 4. Square root 4 is 2. 2 times square root 3. Okay, 2 times square root 3, we can write 2 times 3. It's the simplest form of square root 12. How about 18? Okay, now we need to simplify the square root of 18. What's the square root of 18? Okay, instead of 18, which number do we have? What's the factor of 18 that include perfect square? Now, I'll write the factor of 18. The factor of 18 is 1 times 18 we get 18, 3 times 6 we get 18, and 9 times 2 we get 18. If you look at this factor of 18, we can see we have 9 times 2 equal 18. Because 9 is perfect square, we have to choose 9 times 2 instead of 18, okay? Now we have to write 9 times 2, okay? Okay, 9 times 2. Then we have to distribute the square root for both number, okay? And this, because 9 is perfect square, we have the square root of perfect square, I mean. Okay, the square root of 9 is what? 3 square root 2. Now we can say the simplest form of square root 18 is 3 square root 2. And question C, we have 7 square root 24. Okay, 7 times square root 24. Okay, now we have 7 times square root 24. Okay, now we need to write the factor of 24. What's the factor of 24? 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. If we can see, 4 is perfect square, so we need to choose 4 times 6. Okay, 3 times 8 is not perfect square, and 12 is not perfect square, 1 and 24 is not perfect square. So we have to choose 4 times 6. Okay, now we have 7 times what? Times the square root 4 times 6. Okay, now we need to distribute the square root for both 4 and 6. Then 7 times square root 4 times square root 6. Then we have the square root of 4 because 4 is perfect square. The square root of 4 is 2 times 7 times the square root of 6. 7 times 2 we get 14 times square root of 6. We can write 14 square root of 6. The simplest form of 7 square root 24 is 14 square root of 6. Then question D we have the square root of 12 times the square root of 3. Now we have two different square root. Okay, we need to join to one square root. So we can write 12 times 3. Okay, 12 times 3 we get what? 36. Now because 36 is perfect square, so we have the square root of perfect square. The square root of 36 is 6. Now the simplest form of square root 12 times square root 3 is 6. Last one. The last one is square root 25 over what? Over 9. Then we have to distribute the square root for both 25 and 9. So we have square root 25 over what? Over square root 9. Square root 25 is 5 because 25 is perfect square. And square root 9 is 3. So the simplest form of square root 29 over 9 is 5 over 3. Okay, now I'm gonna do some Nishtimani question. I'll solve some Nishtimani questions. Now we start with question 1. Question 1 is, which expression is written in simplest form? Which expression is written in simplest form? Okay, A, square root 49, and B, square root 44, C, square root 35, D, square root 36. Look, I'll check both of them, okay? A, we can simplify square root 49, yes, because square root 49 is what? 7. Square root 49 is 7. So we can simplify it. Okay? It's not correct. Then, square root 44. We can simplify square root 44? Yes, because we have 4 times 11. 4 times 11. 4 is perfect square. The square root 4 is 2 and square root 11. So we can simplify 44 to 2 square root 11. So it's not correct. How about 35? 35 and 36. Okay? Because 36 is perfect square, so we can simplify it. The square root of 36 is 6. And how about square root 35? We can simplify 35? No, because we don't have perfect squares that we simplified square root 35. So we can say 35 is the simplest, it's in the simplest form. Okay, so the right answer is C. Okay, and question 2. Question 2 is, what is the product of 3 square root 5 and square root 15? What is the product? What's the product means? What's the multiply of 3 square root 5 times square root 15? Okay, 3 square root 5 times square root 15. Now, we need to simplify square root 15, then we multiply each square root, okay? 3 square root 5 times, okay? What's the factor of 5 to 15 is? 5 times 3, okay? 3 square root 5 times, we distribute the square root of both 3 and 5, so we have square root 5 times square root 3. Square root, okay, which number in front of the square root 5? 1. Okay, 1 times 3, we get 3. And square root 5 times square root 5, because we have the same number inside the square root, and the sign between them is multiplication, so directly remove the square root. So we have only 5. Times what? Times square root 3. Okay, then 3 times 5, we get 15 square root of 3. Now the product of 3 square root 5 times square root 15 is 15 square root 3. Okay, so the correct answer is B, 15 square root of 3. Then we have question 3. Question 3 is the simplest form of 2 square root 3 times square root 8. 2 square root 3 times square root 8. Okay, now we need to simplify square root 8. Why we need to simplify square root 8? Because one of the factor of 8 is perfect square. Okay, now we can get 8 from multiply 4 by 2. So instead of 8, we need to write 4 times 2 times 2 square root 3. Okay, 2 square root 3 times square root 4 times square root 2. Now we have to distribute the square root for both 4 and 2. Okay, the square root 4 is what? 2 times 2 square root 3. Okay, times square root 2. Okay, now okay, 2 times 2, we get 4 square root 3 times square root 2. Okay, we have 1 in front of the square root. Okay, now the integer number multiplied by each other, so 4 times 1, we get 1. Then the square root 2 times square root 3, we get what? Square root 6. Now the simplest form of 2 square root 3 times square root 8 is 4 square root of 6. So B is the right answer. Question 4. Multiply square root 18, square root 2 times 18, written in simplest form, okay? Square root 2 times square root 18. Now we can join to one square root. 2 times 18, we get what? We get 36. So the square root of 36 is 6. So the simplest form, 2 square root 2 times square root 18 is 6. So D, the right answer. Then we have question 5. Okay, question 5 is simplify 108 divided by 25. I mean square root 108 divided by 25. Okay, now we have 108 divided by 25. So we need to distribute the square root for both numbers. Okay. Now, which number? What's the factor of 125? Because 36 times 3, we get 108. 108. We can write 36 times 3 instead of 108. So we can write 36 times 3 over square root 25. Okay? Then distribute the square root for both 36 times square root 3 over square root 25. Because 36 is perfect square, so we can find the square root of 36. The square root of 36 is square root 3 over the square root of 25 is 5. So the simplest form is square root 3 over 5. Now the right answer is A. Then which of the following is incorrect? Which of the following is incorrect? Okay. The square root 72 equals square root 2. The square root 3 times square root 15 equals 3 square root 5. The square root 24 equal 2 square root 6. Then the square root 20 equal 5 square root 2. Now we need to check both of them. Okay, now we start with question D. Okay, the square root of 20 equal 5 square root 2. We need to check. Okay, what's the square root of 20? Because 20 is not perfect square, so we need to use perfect square to simplify the square root of 20. Okay, what's the factor of 20 is 4 times 5. So instead of 20, we need to write 4 times 5. Okay, now the square root 4 times square root 5. We get 2 square root 5. Now the simplest form of square root of 20 is 2 square root 5. But look, we have 5 square root 2. It says the square root 20 equal 5 square root 2. But it's not correct. Why? Because we have 2 square root 5. So D is incorrect. Okay? Okay. I'm done. I hope you get benefit with our lesson. I will see you next lesson. Have a great day. Bye-bye.